How can we bring better qualified and more doctors to this part of it?
Question, and I guess everybody heard it. I'm used to being in areas where we don't have the microphones on, and I generally repeat the questions in these kind of settings. So, how do we bring more doctors in? I think we have to look very seriously at the federal level at doing what I call the Northern Exposure Plan for rural areas. One, we have to be willing to have more educational facilities, and we have to work with the AMA on accreditation for more facilities. We also need to take a look at the at various creative ideas for making sure that we have more residency programs that are available. Because if you don't have residents moving around in the areas, then you're not training the doctors as much, particularly in rural areas. We need to have some programs like that. And for those of you who are old enough to remember Northern Exposure, it was a TV show, it was a comedy set in Alaska, where the doctor who was there was not from Alaska, but he got a part of, if not all of his tuition in med school paid if he spent 2 years. I think the show lasted about 5, but if he spent 2 years going to a rural part of Alaska. I think that that's something that we should take a look at, that model of saying, okay, if you're willing to go to an underserved area, it can be inner city or it can be rural, but if you're willing to go to an underserved area, then we will have to take a look at picking up part of that cost. And I think that has to be a partnership between federal and state. I don't think that's a local, but I also would like to see the medical societies make it reasonable but easier for folks to start new medical schools. We've seen 2 open in the last number of years in our region. We've got the osteopathic medicine school at Virginia Tech, the VI school, and you also have Roanoke Memorial Korean Virginia Tech School of Medicine. And that's the right direction to go in. The more doctors you have educated, the more likely they are to move to a rural area.
Do you support lawsuits against the pharmaceutical companies who pushed opioids so aggressively?
I was asked by, I can't go into too much detail, but I was asked by a member of the Board of Supervisors in a county not in the Allegheny Highlands if I thought there was merit to those suits some months ago, and I told him yes. And while I have not studied all of the legal ramifications, I don't know what the solution is, but I will tell you that there are a lot of people in the opioid crisis who did not do what they should have done. And part of that was the drug manufacturers. Even so, everybody wants to point at them, and I think that's fair, and we need to find out. And I've signed on to a letter. I was one of 6 signatories to a letter that went out to the pharmaceutical companies as a part of the Oversight Investigation Subcommittee. We're going to get questions answered by them and hopefully pull them in front of the committee for a grilling. We've already grilled the distribution companies that were dumping millions of pills into West Virginia and other places, but West Virginia was one of the worst. We have gone after them. We have exposed what they did. A lot of the stuff you've read about in the newspapers about how many millions of pills that they sent into small counties are things that there were some reporters that did some good work too. We also got that data in our committee, and it's absolutely atrocious. If you want to see the video clip, look at me going after Williamson. I didn't buy it. They kept trying to say, one of the drug distributors said we should have done a better job, but Williamson got tagged. I'm sorry, I think it's McKesson. I apologize for that. Williamson, West Virginia was one of the towns, but McKesson was the distributor. But they got tagged like in 08 or 07 for a couple of $1 million, $7 or $8 million, and they had to pay another huge fine last year because they kept on dumping. And as long as the profits are there, they're going to dump them into small towns where the pills don't make any sense. And they're supposed to fill out a form that goes to the DEA and tells the DEA, we think this pharmacy is based on their past histories getting way too many pills. And almost half of their regional distribution centers weren't filing those forms the way they were supposed to. That's outrageous. So I would suggest to you that lawyers ought to look at the distribution companies as well. Now that doesn't mean that the FDA shouldn't have been pushing harder for non-addictive pain relief. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't be looking at marijuana for medicinal purposes as an alternative to opioids. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't look at the negligence of the DEA and some of the rules they changed. If somebody wants to ask a question about that, I'm happy to go into detail, but I think probably my time is close to up on the opioid question.
How will you advocate for more state support of teacher salaries, even out the pay scale in Northern Virginia?
And again, this is a state issue as opposed to a federal issue. I'm happy to, talk to my colleagues in the Virginia House of Delegates and in the state Senate. I do think that teachers, ought to be paid more. It's always that dilemma of where does the money come from? The governor's been talking about the windfall that the state's going to receive because maybe to Nancy Pelosi it's crumbs, but as a result of those lower taxes on the people in Virginia, that means they pay more state taxes, and the governor thinks we're going to have $500 million from taxpayers in Virginia because they didn't pay the federal taxes, so they have to pay the smaller state tax, but they still have to pay more because they're not deducting as much. That's a lot of money. And that's something that I think the state legislators ought to look at. Now, they're looking at all kinds of things, school construction. There's lots of things that the state legislature is looking at. But I learned, having served 17 years in the state legislature, that if I push too hard as a federal legislator, all I'm going to do is get their backs up. So I will try to gently encourage them to look at teacher pay. I would be remiss if I didn't mention my mother, who is now 88 years old and was a school teacher for over 40 years. And, came home every night. She was a single parent. She came home every night exhausted. She used to take a nap before she'd fix dinner. She'd get home from school, she'd take a nap, she'd get up and fix dinner. And then she'd go to bed early, and the next morning she'd be up early, and my sister and I would go off to school, and she would come home again, exhausted. If you're on stage, and that's what teachers are, if they're doing it right, they've got to keep people engaged. If you're on stage for hours a day, you're going to come home tired.
Okay, thank you. You've alluded to this a little bit earlier, but how do you see economic development happening in the coal fields, an area that has always been a model economy?
We have to diversify. I don't think that coal is dead. There are people who think that coal is dead. It's not. But Virginia has a large amount of metallurgical coal, which will always have a value. Now, the difference between the various, and there's lots of different types, but generally in the coal fields we refer to metallurgical coal and steam coal. One makes power or heats things. That's the steam coal. The other one can do all of that, but it burns at a hotter temperature. And so we have a coke plant in the district, which then is used to make steel. That's why it's called metallurgical coal. We have high quality metallurgical coal in Southwest Virginia, so it will be there. But what we don't want going forward is to have, I think the word used, monological. We don't want to have one industry. We want to have multiple industries. And that's true everywhere, including here in the Allegheny Islands. So what I tell my counterparts, and actually on the floor in one of my debates fighting to get some programs going for the coal fields, I said, you tell us you want us to diversify, and then you won't let us do it. Because I put in an amendment that would bring money into the coal fields to take abandoned coal mine facilities and convert those ones that did not meet the standards that they should meet for safety and cleanliness, and take those things, convert them, make them clean, make them safe, but also be looking at an economic development purpose. And so it takes a while to get things going. We actually got that money 3 cycles ago. We're in the 3rd cycle. The first grants were given out this summer. We're creating in those areas. We're cleaning up a lot of dangerous mine portals. I call those entrances, but in the industry they're called portals. So we're cleaning up the mine portals. We're cleaning up a high wall. We're cleaning up a pond of coal fines where we're taking all the coal fines out. And it's not just federal money. We're creating all kinds of good things. I'll go over that in just a second. But it's also private money. So one of my favorites of the 5 that we've announced this year, got another $10 million for next year, takes this coal fines. Private folks figured out they can now burn those, whereas 50 years ago, 20 years ago, they were not usable. They were just waste. They now can be used. They're going to clean it up. They're going to sell that. And when the whole thing is done, they're taking down some old coal buildings too, making sure everything is made safe. They're going to hand over to Russell County a 232-acre, roughly 232-acre economic development industrial park that already has water. Nobody has to pay for it. It already has rail. It already has electricity. It already has natural gas. And the cost was $3.2 million because we're working in a combination of public-private, the county, the federal government, the state, and private industry. It's going to cost less than half of the $7 million that was estimated it would cost to clean it up. And in all fairness, federal folks who were working on this said they probably wouldn't get to it anytime in the next, they said in the future, I'm going to say 20 years. And now it's going to be done in 2 years. We will have taken land that was not usable and have a diversified purpose for it. That's exciting. We've got some economic, ecotourism projects in there as well, and taking down a high wall in the city of Norfolk. So that's part of what we're trying to do. Hopefully over the next few years, this will open up opportunities for them to diversify their economy. If we can figure out something we can do here in Covington, we don't have earmarks, which makes it more difficult. So what we have to do is we have to figure out a way to latch onto something that's out there and figure out a way to reinvent it. So we took the old AML program and put new money into it, abandoned mine money, put new money that could be used for economic development and AML purposes. And we created that, and there's 6 states that get that. And at first they only wanted to do 3 states, and I insisted they do 6 because Virginia's number 6 and the number of mine sites that need to be cleaned up. And I found a way to define it so for 2 years, Ohio and Alabama had no idea I was getting the money. And I was glad to do it, because if that's how I have to work to get Virginia economic development, then I'll put Ohio and Alabama on my back and I'll carry them too.
Thank you. How do you feel about the current new tech movement in education with an increased reliance on technology and project-based learning?
I think we have to, and there's always good and bad in everything. Every age has really good stuff, and sometimes we find out, so we've got to make sure that we're doing it right. But I will tell you, I think we have to use the technology. I think there's some exciting things we can do with technology and education. I'm not completely familiar with that terminology, but if we aren't doing long-distance learning, even in the high schools, and maybe even sometimes in the middle schools, if we're not making opportunities available to our rural schools, we're missing a real opportunity. The technologies are available, the programs are available. My youngest is 10. He didn't do as well as he wanted to, but he started learning Italian about a year ago. And every now and then he'll pick up his tablet and start playing with the Italian language program that he's got. These are the kinds of tools that we can use positively. Now what you have to be careful of is I also have a problem with, and then he goes to a game and he spends all of his time playing a game. But if we can make sure that we can do this properly, we can use technology, we can make it more fun, we can make it more relevant to them, and that's important. If you make it relevant and fun, it's amazing. Those kids who find something interesting, they'll learn how to do stuff that we've never even thought about them knowing to do. And that will be how we make the next leap forward in technology, is that it's going to be somebody who's a 10 or 12, 15-year-old who's playing on a computer tonight, comes out years from now and invents something new.
Thank you. Where is the insurance situation going, and where do you think rates are going for private individuals?
We're talking about health insurance?
Health insurance.
Health insurance. Don't know. I wish I could tell you that I had a crystal ball and I could give you a clear picture. The Obamacare plan, and the President actually said this in the 9th District on the other end, he said that you could keep your doctor, you could keep your plan, and it was going to save you $2,500 for an average family a year. That hasn't happened. The facts is that prices have been driven up, and more than just the price of the insurance, deductibles and co-pays have been driven up. So we've got a number of things to work on. I think in the short run you will see prices go up. Some of the regulations that have been rolled back, even in Obamacare by the current administration, will bear fruit, but it's going to be a year or two from now. If you want to go out and get a different type of policy, one that doesn't cover everything, that doesn't qualify for Obamacare, you will be able to do that. Some of those plans are rolling out this year, but I don't think they're rolling out in Virginia, or certainly not in the 9th District. But I do anticipate they'll roll out shortly, and some people will elect and make a choice that that's where they want to go. I do think at some point you will see prices go down. The House has passed a bill that would allow you to buy across state lines. The House has passed a bill, it's all sitting over in the Senate, so talk to your senators. The House has passed a bill that takes away the antitrust provisions that are currently protecting the big insurance companies. We're down to a couple of handfuls at most of people who provide health insurance. We think if you put them back on, they're not liable. Like Coca-Cola and Pepsi get together and collude on prices, or they get together and share information. That's a violation of the trust laws. The health insurance companies are not bound by that. Now, I understand they need to be able to share health information, but that's all they should be able to share. We need to break that up and make sure that we have competition. And I do think it's going to be difficult, and it takes some power away from the states, which I always hate to do. But each state can have a minimum of some sort. But I do think we have to look at something across state lines. So, for example, we don't get into a situation where, you can't have the same policy in Covington that you would have in Lewisburg. And right now we have that. And you ought to be there ought to be groups, because I think when you look at healthcare, you might very well see a Central Appalachian healthcare plan developed that deals with the needs of Central Appalachia. And while it's not just the gold fields, people don't always understand Appalachia is a lot bigger than that. And Covington is a part of it, is Allegheny, part of the Appalachian area demographically. And so we need to take a look at that and give the opportunities for people to come up with new ideas on how we can provide insurance at a cheaper cost. If we only have the big six players out there and a handful of others, they're never going to be pushed to bring their prices down in order to compete. You get competition, you're going to get some price reduction. You also get more products available out there, as opposed to saying you have to do the gold or the silver plan through the Obamacare exchanges. Then you're going to see some competition, which is why one of the regulations will be another year before all this develops out, but you should be able to buy a copper plan as well, even if you're going through the Obamacare exchanges, which at least until recently you were not able to do. You could only buy silver or gold.
So related to that,
yes.
Another question that came up was the control of the cost of medication for the middle class individual. Is there anything else you want to add to?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a different question. They're in the same range, in the same church staff.
Yeah, that's right.
So here's what we've been working on. It's absolutely crazy. We've got to do some harder work on this. So what you have is the drug manufacturers. You've then got a group called the PBMs, Pharmacy Benefit Managers. Then you have the insurance companies. Then you have the pharmacies themselves. And then you have the patients. The people who are getting the short end of the stick are the pharmacies themselves, unless they're also a PBM and an insurance company. There's actually a move right now for one well-known pharmacy chain. They're both a PBM and a pharmacy chain right now, and they want to be an insurance company. When you start getting those folks all together, your prices are going to go up. So here's what's been happening, and I give credit to the state legislature. Todd Pillion, we passed a bill out of the House, sitting in the Senate, that would prohibit this. But here's what we found out in the hearing that we had in front of the investigation, or the health subcommittee, the health subcommittee, that's it all. The manufacturers are called up by in some cases, not all, but in some cases, the pharmacy benefit manager companies call up the manufacturers and say, hey, why don't you raise your price a little bit, then we can show that we're giving a bigger discount to the insurance companies. And then, you'll get at least what you wanted in the first place, and maybe a little bit more when you discount it to us, because we're buying so much of it. Because what these pharmacy benefit managers do is they buy, as they're basically the broker for the manufacturers directly to the pharmacies. Well, they started making some pretty good money that way, because they didn't pass that savings discount that they were getting on to the insurance company and then to the patient through the pharmacy. Well, then the insurance companies figured it out, so they created a rebate program for the insurance companies. So now they've raised the price of the drug, and then they take that excess amount. The drug companies are getting some of it, but not the lion's share. The lion's share now gets split between the pharmacy benefit manager and the insurance company. The pharmacy, unless it's also, like I said, unless it's also a PBM and or an insurer, your local pharmacy isn't getting a cut of this. They're just trying to survive under the system. Until July 1st, in Virginia, they couldn't tell you everything they knew. They were gagged, and all of their supply could be cut off. So when you went to your pharmacy, you'd go in and you'd say, I need the XYZ drug, and they'd charge you a price for it, and then you'd have to pay a copay of whatever your copay is. Well, Todd Pillion, who's out of the Abington area, figured this thing out. We figured it out. We passed a bill, but the state works faster than the federal government. They got theirs already in the law. As of July 1, you can ask your pharmacy, how much would this cost if I didn't use my insurance? So here's what happened to a lady in Benton, not in the 9th District, but her sister lives in the 9th District, and I was telling this story to her, and she brought it to me. She said, oh my God, that happened to my sister. Her insurance company at first said the XYZ drug, she couldn't get it, wasn't in her formulary. And she'd have to pay for it herself if she wanted it. And so she went to her local pharmacy and said, my insurance won't pay for this, and I'll just pay for it. It was $17. A month later, the insurance company said, oh, we've decided that's now on the formulary, you can get the XYZ drug. She called it in to the pharmacy. She went to pick it up, and they said, that's great, that'll be a $50 copay. She said, whoa, wait a minute, I bought it last month, it was only $17. And they said, let me get the pharmacist. And the pharmacist said, well, I'm not allowed to tell you this, but since you've asked, I can sell it to you if you don't use your insurance for $17, but if you use your insurance, the copay is $50. That's outrageous. It's wrong. Thanks to Todd Pillion, it's no longer the law in Virginia, and hopefully if the Senate passes it, it will be eliminated nationwide. But this is one of the ills that we have. Now, there's lots of other problems we have with the cost of medicine, but this just goes to show you that, if we hadn't sat all these people down and got them all pointing fingers at each other, and I had done my research and had figured this out as well, and I said to the pharmacist, is this true? And he said, yes. And I looked back at the PBMs and I said, I know you had a purpose when you started, and you still have some purpose, some good purpose. But this has to stop, and if you don't figure it out, and y'all don't stop it as an industry, we will pass legislation to stop it, and we will. And we will continue to work to make pharmaceuticals cost less.